Welcome back to our channel.
I'm Ray.
And I'm Jordan.
Feel free to check out some of our other videos, and if you enjoy, consider subscribing to our channel. We post bi-weekly videos.
Today we are going to be discussing Season 1 of Doctor Who, or Series 14, or Season 40, whatever you want to call it. It's Ncuti Gatwa's first season as the 15th Doctor. This season consisted of an excruciatingly short 8 episodes. 9 if you want to count the church on Ruby Road, which we are. This season definitely had its good episodes and its not so good episodes, its ups and its downs, its pros and its cons, if you will. And what better way to talk about this season than to rank each episode?
Alright guys, I'm gonna head behind camera for this video and I'll let Jordan take it from here.
So let's step into the TARDIS and begin our adventure. Starting out surprisingly strong is the church on Ruby Road. Now the reason I say surprisingly is because I did have a few issues with the previous episode, The Giggle, which you can hear me talk about in our Doctor Who 60th Anniversary Specials review. I enjoyed the church on Ruby Road quite a lot, really. I was beyond excited to see Ncuti Gatwa have his first actual episode as the Doctor, and I was so ready to finally meet Ruby Sunday as well and learn all about her. Also, we saw our second sighting of Susan Twist's character in this episode as the woman in the pub. I also love the entire fantasy vibe of this episode, and I want to give a special shout out to whoever wrote the Goblin song, because that was an absolute banger, and I had it on repeat for weeks. Overall, I think it was a good introduction to the 15th Doctor and Ruby, but it wasn't anything special. It was just a fun, safe, casual episode of Doctor Who. Which is why, unfortunately, this Christmas special is going at number 6. Moving on to Space Babies. An episode that was supposed to be a good jumping on point for people, but for me it just kind of fell short. Again, I enjoyed it for what it was. Personally, however, I like to look for the positives in Doctor Who because I enjoy the show so much, and it's not something I just want to nitpick and pick apart and find all the negative things about. So I like to focus on the positive things because I want to actually enjoy it. Also, we saw another sighting of Susan Twist's character, sprinkling that story arc throughout the season. I see you, Russell T. Davies. However, this episode being a good jumping on point for new viewers, I don't think so. It was too weak of an episode. It was too bland of an episode. It had no, I'm not even gonna say pretty, I'm gonna say really. It had a really boring resolution, and I feel like it didn't really do a good job of explaining who the Doctor and Ruby are to new viewers. It's like you're thrown in and just expected to know who they are. Yeah, you might have watched the previous episode, but this is supposed to give a little more foundation on who the Doctor is, what he does, and it didn't give that for me. But like I said, this episode was okay. But being okay in this season isn't good enough, because there were a lot of fantastic episodes. So with that being said, Space Babies is going at the bottom at number 9. Next up is one of my most anticipated episodes, The Devil's Cord. As soon as I heard that they had cast Jinx Monsoon in Doctor Who, I knew that was going to be one of my favorite episodes. Ray and I are huge fans of Jinx Monsoon. We loved her in RuPaul's Drag Race.
Water off the duck's back. Water off the duck's back.
Jinx, are you alright?
Oh, yeah.
We loved her as Emerald in Steven Universe. And also in this episode, we had our 4th sighting of Susan Twist's character as the tea lady in the cafe. The episode itself was so fun. I remember being on Twitter after it aired and just reading what people were saying. Some people were saying that it was a mess, but in a good way. And I don't think there's a better way to describe this episode than a fun, good mess. It was all over the place, but in a fun, campy way. And Maestro is definitely one of my favorite villains. They are probably one of the best villains of Doctor Who ever, in my opinion. Yeah, I said it. Also, not to mention the casual name drop of the Doctor's granddaughter Susan literally had me kicking my feet and screaming. The Devil's Cord was such a unique episode for Doctor Who, and I love when the show steps out of its comfort zone and does something that it's never done before. The creativeness was off the scale, from the piano segue into the opening credits to the musical number at the end. I'm putting The Devil's Cord at number 4. On to episode 4, Boom! By none other than the Doctor Who writing legend, Stephen Moffat. Now I knew before I even watched this episode that I was going to love it. because it was written by the man who created the best Doctor of all time, the 12th Doctor. Having Stephen Moffat back to write for Doctor Who was honestly one of the best decisions ever. No one gets Doctor Who like he does, and seeing him write for Ncuti Gatwa just made me so happy. And the concept of an episode where the Doctor is stuck in one place the entire episode is just absolutely genius. That, paired with the anti-capitalist message, made it a complete masterpiece. Not to mention Ncuti Gatwa's performance as well. He ate and left no crumbs. How many actors can stand in one place and convey that many emotions? He's just so good. I could talk about him forever. I could talk about his acting for hours. He is amazing. And also, we saw Susan Twist's character again as an ambulance. Do you ever dream of being an ambulance? But yeah, overall, this episode was so enjoyable, and I think we got the best characterization of the 15th Doctor up until that point in the season. For that, I place it at number 2. Next up is 73 Yards, which I was originally going to say was perhaps the most divisive episode of the season, but then I watched the finale, and that might have become the most divisive episode of the season. So let me just say 73 Yards is one of the most divisive episodes of this season. After the episode aired and I saw people talking about it, I pretty much only saw 3 things. People either absolutely loved it and thought it was prime television, people didn't know what to think, or people completely hated it and thought it was pointless. I think one reason for some people disliking it is because it was a Dr. Light episode, due to Ncuti Gatwa filming season 4 of Sex Education. But there are plenty of amazing Dr. Light episodes, like Blink or Turn Left, 2 of the most iconic Doctor Who episodes of all time. Immediately after watching it, I loved it. But then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that some things didn't make sense, and some things I just wanted to learn more about and I needed more answers for. Such as, what did the woman whisper to make people run away? That's still a very big question for me. However, I do think that that was the point. You're supposed to have unanswered questions, and that's just how the episode was written. And of course, we can't forget another appearance of Susan Twist's character as the hiker, who this time Ruby almost recognized. Despite some of the issues I have for this episode, I still really enjoyed it, and I can't forget my initial feelings when I watched it. I felt that way for a reason, which is why I'm going to place this episode at number 5. The 6th episode we have is another Dr. Light episode, Dot and Bubble. This is another one that I saw people torn between, but me personally, this was one of my favorite episodes of the entire season, because the premise of a seemingly utopian society living as pioneers on an untamed world is sick to me. Like, that tickles something in my brain, and I really like that. I love utopian, dystopian stuff like this. But can we all agree that Lindy Pepper Bean is one of the worst, probably most hated characters in all of Doctor Who? She deserves whatever fate she meets when she goes out there in the wilderness to try and live on her own. I hope she falls off a waterfall, or like a tree falls on her, something, I don't know, but whatever happens, if it's bad, she deserves it. But we also did see that her mother was played by Susan Twist, whom the Doctor and Ruby recognized this time. The plot thickens. The scene that finally sealed the deal on this episode being one of my favorites was when Lindy Pepper Bean finally meets the Doctor and Ruby face to face, and they find out that she is a raging racist. Ncuti's performance in that actually made me tear up, and I can't believe how lucky we are to actually have him as the Doctor. He is just out of this world, insane, talented, spectacular, everything. I love him. And the fact that it was the first scene he filmed for this season, give him his 10s. I just really hope that we get black writers next season to write for our first Black Doctor. I would love to see that. Can we also talk about the music in this scene? The music alone made this one of the most phenomenal episodes. Mixing the long song from the 11th Doctor's era with the 15th Doctor's theme is just genius. Like, move over maestro, the real god of music is here, Murray Gold.
That's funny.
I hate that. I literally found that song from that scene. Somebody had posted it on Twitter, and I just played it over and over and over again because it's a masterpiece. It is everything I ever want. I missed having Murray Gold in Doctor Who, and this is why. All of that being said, I place Dot and Bubble at number 3. And then we have the pre-two-parter finale episode, Rogue. I just want to preface this one by saying this was another episode that I had been waiting for a very long time. For one, I've loved Jonathan Groff for years. I was a diehard Hamilton fan, and I loved him as King George. I also loved him as Kristoff in Frozen. And then there's Indira Varma, who I was low-key even more excited to see because she gave a stellar performance as Ilaria Sand in Game of Thrones. She's a spectacular actress, and honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing her as the Doctor sometime in the future. But moving on to the episode itself. This felt like a more normal episode of Doctor Who. It felt like it had a linear plot with a beginning, middle, and end where the Doctor comes in, shakes things up, and then leaves. But it also felt like so much more. It was a fantastic episode, and I loved every single second of it. Even seeing Susan Twist again for just a second as the portrait. Now, I've never seen Bridgerton before, but I know this episode had a big Bridgerton vibe, and I'm totally here for that. I love the orchestra versions of the pop songs, I love the drama, I loved it all. I especially loved the orchestra version of Bad Guy by Billie Eilish. I feel like they did that just for me, because I love Billie Eilish. And of course, I love the relationship between the Doctor and Rogue. Some people said it seemed a little rushed or forced, but I completely disagree. The spark was very evident, and who knows, maybe this incarnation of the Doctor just moves faster when he's attracted to people. You don't know. I really hope that Rogue isn't gone for good, but knowing this show, I doubt that he is, because I absolutely adored his character. He was fun, he was charming, he was a breath of fresh air, and I'm just really hopeful that he returns. Also, another special shout out to that scene of Ruby entering battle mode when the orchestra version of Bad Romance plays. I watched that scene over and over and over. I don't know, something about it, I was just addicted to it, and I don't know, I couldn't stop watching it. I adored every single thing about this episode, every second, every scene, so it's honestly probably no surprise when I put it at number 1. Then we have the first part of the finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday. This episode opened with the TARDIS crashing through into Unit Tower because the Doctor finally decided that it's time to figure out who Susan Twist's character is after seeing her cropping up all across time and space. Now, I thought it was interesting and really good fan service for the Doctor to be led to believe that Susan Triad was his granddaughter, Susan Foreman. But, well, that's not who she was. I'm still holding on to a hope that Susan does make a return next season because why explain who she is and reference her so much if it's all going to be for nothing, really? Like, I feel like she has to return in some way. I really hope she does, because it's literally been 60 years, and I need Susan Foreman to return. This episode, while a little messy, was still enjoyable. I love seeing more of Ruby's past and exploring what happened at the church that night. I had literal chills for that entire scene. I feel like it was done really well. And of course, I love seeing more of Mel. I am so happy that she's been getting more characterization in these past couple episodes that she's been in than she did during her entire time as the companion back in the 80s. Because let's face it, she really deserves it. Prior to this episode, I saw so many theories about who the big villain was going to be. So when it turned out to be Sutekh, I feel like those people who theorized that it was going to be were probably pretty satisfied. I know I would have been. And then of course there's the cliffhanger. It had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. The dialogue in that part, Russell T Davies absolutely devoured. I loved it. It just, I don't know, it gave me chills. I loved it. I love stuff like that. I love this is the one who waits. But yeah, just props to Russell T Davies for writing the dialogue in that scene because it was impeccable. And I know some people didn't like this episode because it was just setting up a lot of questions to be answered in the second part of the finale. But I definitely understood that, so I knew I wasn't going to feel completely satisfied with the ending of this episode. But because of that, I have to place this episode at number 8. And finally, we arrive at the very last episode of the 15th Doctor's first season, Empire of Death. As I just said, this episode was supposed to have a lot of answers to the questions that the previous episode posed. But did it? somewhat. I just want to preface me talking about this episode by saying that it's the freshest one in my memory. I've watched it the most recently. Now firstly, I do want to say that I did enjoy watching this episode. Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson and Bonnie Langford, wow, gave stellar performances. There were several scenes that made me feel a lot of emotion, and they made me want to cry, they made me want to smile, and I just really liked those scenes. Such as the doctor thinking that all of Sutek's destruction was his fault, the doctor getting the spoon from that woman after everything had been destroyed, Ruby finally meeting her mom in the cafe. That scene was everything. And then of course Ruby's exit, her exit at the end. However, there were some things that I didn't like. One, there was no one standing around watching Ruby's mom after she dropped Ruby off at the church. So when she pointed at the sign that said Ruby Road, how did anyone know that that's what she wanted her daughter to be called? Did they was it a coincidence that they named her that and she wanted her daughter named that? I don't know, it doesn't exactly make sense to me. And also, why was she wearing a cloak? She's a 15-year-old girl in 2004. Why was she wearing a wizard cloak? Why did she turn so dramatically and point like that? Especially if no one was there to see it. I don't know. It's just left me with some confused thoughts about it. I'll put it that way. And also, I feel like Sutek wasn't really that scary. He's supposed to be the god of death. He's supposed to be this all-powerful god that is terrifying, but I feel like they really underused his return, and it didn't really solidify it for me. He didn't really feel like anything. Also, I was hoping to get some answers to 73 Yards, because like I said, I had a lot of questions from that episode, and I thought I was going to, but now I'm just more confused. And also I'm confused about how everyone was brought back to life. I get bringing death to death makes life, but how? It just seemed like an easy cop-out to me. And also throwing Sutek into the time vortex, that didn't exactly work out too well the last time, did it? But enough of the negativity. As I said, I am not one to bash Doctor Who. I like to look at the positives. Like I mentioned, some of the scenes made me so emotional. I want to talk about one of the final scenes between 15 and Ruby in the TARDIS. This scene was so well acted, and it's one of, if not my favorite scene of the entire episode. I did feel sad seeing Ruby saying goodbye to the Doctor, even though she's gonna be back next season. So not too sad. But, and I know I said I'm done with the negativity, but just one more thing. I think I would have felt even more emotion if the Doctor and Ruby's relationship had been built up a little more. I feel like we were thrown into this season and just expected to believe that they were best friends, but we didn't get any touching developmental scenes that actually explored that. And then in The Devil's Cord, the second episode of the season, Ruby says that she's been traveling with the Doctor for 6 months, but it's the second episode, and I feel like we missed out on a bunch of their development with that big of a time jump. Take the 11th Doctor and Amy Pond, for example. They're probably the best example of a Doctor/companion friendship. That was done perfectly, and I truly, in my soul, felt like they were best friends. So all I'm saying is this scene could have packed a lot more of a punch if we had gotten more time with 15 and Ruby. Perhaps back to 12 episode seasons to maybe flesh them out more. 13. I'd even settle for the Chibnall 10, to be honest. At the end of the day, it was an okay episode. Not the worst, not the best. There were things I liked, and there were things I didn't like, as there are with every episode of Doctor Who. With all that said, I put Empire of Death at the final place left, number 7. And there you have it. Those are all the episodes of Ncuti Gatwa, the 15th Doctor's first season ranked. This season was a roller coaster of highs and lows, and I can't deny that I had a lot of fun. Even if it left me wanting more, and not always in a good way, I still looked forward to each episode every week, and I think that that's what matters. Us fans are truly blessed to have Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor and Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday. I can't wait for the Christmas special this year, partly because it's written by Stephen Moffat, and then also Ncuti Gatwa's second season. I just want him to be the Doctor as long as possible because I'm absolutely in love with his portrayal. And I think it's good to remember what I said. don't always focus on the negatives of Doctor Who. That's a good way to just ruin the show. Focus on the positive things, the things you like, because that's what I do, and that's what keeps me always coming back for more and engaging with the show and just loving it as much as I do. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of the season. What's your favorite episode? What's your least favorite episode? Did you agree or disagree with anything I said? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.